Hey everyone, I'm Alison with Better Half Reviews, and I'm going to be talking to you about Stonesaga. This is from OOMM Games, and it's a Kickstarter game. I've got the prototype here in front of me, and there's several pieces that are off camera, but this gives you a gist of what comes in the box a little bit. So, this is a Kickstarter game. I've got a giant box, and I don't even know if the final copy is going to be a little bit bigger, but this game has a lot of stuff in it because you are going through a survival state. You're picking a character and you're working through a campaign, basically, of different places to discover and things to do. It's very hard to even just talk about this game without saying everything at once because there's just so much. So to give you a good idea, there's several videos that have like a how to play, even a playthrough. If you want to check that out, Purple Moose Plays, Carl, he has a really good video showing how you play it and kind of walking you through it. So I'm just going to talk to you about how things feel. So when I was first hearing about this game and first checking it out and getting into it, it reminded me a lot of video games that I had played. So like Zelda Breath of the Wild, where you're going on exploring and you're finding items and maybe trying to combine different things together and crafting things into brand new objects or tools, something that you can use. And it also reminded me of Near and Far from Red Raven Games, if you've played that, which is actually one of my favorite games, where you're going through a campaign and you have maps out in front of you and you're kind of exploring and you're like hearing bits of information from different people, maybe doing some quests, and then trying to figure out, okay, I got that information here, maybe I could use it somewhere else to help me get something else. So Stonesaga kind of has a mixture of all of that. And it takes it a little bit more uniquely than I've seen other games do certain things. So as you're going out exploring, you're going to be putting out different tiles. And something that I like that they did, this is just going to be kind of a hodgepodge of different things because there's so much stuff, I just want to talk about all of it. So as you're exploring, I like that they have these little tile centers, and you're going to put out your tiles upside down before you go out. And what's kind of cool is lots of times when you have games like this where you're like, oh, okay, you're going to set out a new tile, the back of it is just like, okay, you have no idea what you're going to get. But the backs of these tiles will have like clouds and things that are faded, but you can kind of see, oh, I think there's a bit of water. Oh, I think there's a bit of mountain. So before you go out exploring, you can kind of be like, maybe I wouldn't go to there. I want to go over here where there's like a valley or a cave. And then you flip it over. So you can kind of see a little bit about where you're going before you actually go and explore. As you're exploring, maybe going through some forest or plains, you may come upon some different items. Like maybe you find a tree and you take some branches. As you collect items, you're going to be putting them into your pack. So you have these different characters, and they're known as mantles. And you have this big pack, which is dual layered, so you'll be putting tokens in it. And so since it is dual layered, there's only so many tokens that you can fit inside of it, so you have to be very careful how you orient some of the things that you're getting and what you can even keep. So like you have like water tokens that have a little bit of a pointy to it, so it's like, oh, I can stick this up in that corner and use the most of my space. Obviously, when you're beginning, you don't have that many items, so you don't really have to worry about that too much. But that's something that comes into play a little bit later in the game. But if I find some tree branches, I can take it, and it says, okay, I've got a stick. But if I figure out how to process it or sharpen it, tone it down, if you flip it over, oh, now it has a pointy part to it. Okay. And maybe later on, I might find a rock. Then I figure out how to, smooth that down, shape it down, and I will be able to process it. Oh, hey, it's pointy. What happens if I put a rock and a stick together and you can craft items? Maybe I can make a spear, or maybe I can make like a little axe or hammer. Out of all the games that I've played or even looked into that have kind of this campaign-like aspect where you're going through and you're exploring and trying to figure out how to survive and like moving on through the process, this game feels more realistic in a sense of how you're doing things. So when you are crafting, it depends on like how you're deciding where to put different items. Like if I had that stick and I put a sharp rock pointing up, it'd make a spear, but maybe if I put it this way and have the point this way, maybe I'd end up with like a hammer type of thing. So orientation and everything, like how you do it, does matter. And with real life, you know, you may find like, oh, how happens if I put these two items together? You can go look it up. It's like, oh, that doesn't make any, sorry. It's a trial and error. But maybe I'll discover something else and, oh, wow, that's a sweet item. You will actually have a little book where you can write down your recipes, because items don't last forever. So you can write down your recipes of like, okay, this is what I did, this is what I combined, and this is what it made. And just like in real life, if you use something too much or do something too hard with it, it could break. So maybe my spear would break, but I would have my recipe, so I can go out and be able to make another one without having to try to like guess how did I combine things. Obviously, a spear is not too complicated, but other things you may not remember. Since this is a survival game and you're working through things, you obviously have like your health, and then down here is energy. So you can't just keep going and going all day, do like exploring things and crafting things. It takes energy, and there's things that may happen to you that take away from your health, or maybe you have like a minor illness or an injury. So you'll note these on your board. And then up here is something that I didn't talk about yet. You have a little character card that you're going to be creating at the beginning that you'll put right in here. And so, you know, you get to decide, you know, what their name is and what their traits are. And you'll mark that, you know, since you're starting out with a character, you can mark them as young. Then as you're going through it, you can mark them as old. Or if they pass away, they'll become legend and maybe pass things on to future generations. But what you're going to be doing when you're setting up a character is you're going to be rolling out some dice. And then you're going to go through those and pick the number and match it with the different traits. So you have might, dexterity, conviction, and awareness. So with this guy, he's, you know, decently big. He's got some really cool weapons here. You know, I think he would have like a lot of might and conviction. So maybe if I have some of those higher numbers, I would place those for there. And you actually like write it in. I don't know if they're gonna have it, keep it that way, or if you just write on it, if they're gonna have stickers or something. I would kind of like to have stickers. That's just me, because sometimes handwriting can be unclear. I don't know. That's just my thought. But anyway, so then you'll have your character traits. There are ways that you can increase some of those attributes throughout the game. Yeah. As you can see here in this prototype, I have a lot of different decks of cards out on the table. There's a lot of different things that you will be delving into. That is a pun because you can delve in this game, point aside. But it's, at first when you're sorting through it, it can feel a little bit overwhelming. But as you're going through the game, you're not using everything all at once, because you have like the day phase, and then you have the night phase and outposts. So you're not doing everything all at once, and you kind of take it one step at a time. And that's why this quick guide was very helpful. It kind of walks you through the first scenario, like helping you like go through, okay, now you're going to do this. Okay, now you're going to do this. Now you need to make a decision. So it kind of like holds your hand a little bit at the beginning. And I'd only have these first 3 scenarios here. And but what I've been seeing from other people as well, it's I feel like this game will open up the further you go into it. So when you're starting, it kind of holds your hand, and you kind of have limited choices. But the more you're going through the campaign, the more varied your characters will be, the more varied your items will be, the more varied behemoths you may see, and the story opens up enough that I feel like it'll be a little bit more unique as you go. So I want to give the perspective from someone like me where games like this usually intrigue me, and then I chicken out and never really do them. So with me, like Near and Far felt a little bit more doable because it's very contained and not very open world. And so stuff like this, I'm like, oh, it looks really cool, sounds cool. I love like the story aspect and kind of like going through it, where it's like you're experiencing a book basically, but you're making it yourself. But with this, games like these, it feels hard to get it to the table and play through it because it's just, there's a lot. This one, I would say, probably does a better job of feeling a little bit more accessible because of how things are laid out. I mean, you'll have this book where you can help, like, you know, save your game. But I really like that they have these trays where instead of having to like set out the entire map I would probably be like, oh, hey, look, I'll just keep this tray together and stack this on top and try to like keep it all set up. I mean, you can make note of it because there's little numbers and everything, but it feels a little bit easier where it's like, oh, it's a quicker setup. And with that, there's a lot of things going on. So one thing that I don't like in some bigger games is where you're constantly having to flip through the rule book and try to remember, okay, wait, how do I do this again? Where do I do this? That will happen in a game like this, and that's fine. But I like that they have these reference cards that really help feel like you're not always flipping through a giant book to remember something. So you have these reference cards about like processing, crafting, night phase, day phase, forest foraging, outpost, and then some of the mini games that I haven't talked about yet. These really help just as like a quick refresher. I'm like, oh, okay, follow these steps. Okay, do this. So rather than flipping through a giant book, I just be like, here's the one card I need. Okay, check it out. Good. Yes, it is more cards to the game, but I appreciated these. Some of their quick references just makes it a little bit easier. In Stonesaga, as you're exploring and doing things, you'll also come across some mini games, and I like having that aspect because this game is big and overarching of like your story, and you're going out exploring, you're finding these cards. But I like having like the option of these little mini games where maybe you're pushing your luck, like with fishing, where you get out a card and then you're like, okay, and here's my route. Okay, I'm gonna push my luck. Do you think I'm gonna end up getting 2 fish, some other item along the way, based on like different dice rolls, so you're matching up the cards. So I like that it has like a little bit of different elements to shake up what you're doing the rest of the game. Where you're like, ooh, okay, am I gonna get something good or am I gonna miss? Or, when you're foraging, am I going to get something good? Or am I going to come across a monster? What's going to happen? You're going to push your luck and see what's going to happen. Something else I appreciated with Stonesaga compared to other games that I've played sort of similar to this is usually in games where it's like, okay, haha, the big behemoth comes out. You're like, oh no, we need to like go attack it and kill it. It's going to get in the way. These are a little bit different. We just have 2 of these for the prototype. Behemoths aren't necessarily like, okay, go and attack them. They wander around the lands. Maybe they're searching for something in particular. They're also dropping lore along the way. So maybe you'll have something that you can learn from the behemoth. Maybe if you study it, you can figure something out. So it was just kind of a different take on games because lots of times it's like, okay, big thing, kill it, go get rid of it. Okay, get the plunder, we're good. This was a little bit different where it's like, okay, what does this behemoth know? Where is it going? Why is it doing this? So overall, I've, just skimmed across the surface of a few of these different things that will be happening in Stonesaga. There's so much more I have not talked about. But again, there's a few other how-tos, playthroughs that have way more depth. But I just want to talk about a few different aspects here. And overall with Stonesaga, since it is a survival game, a campaign game, a story game, you really get what you give it. You could go through the motions and do it and be like, okay, yeah, I'm going to get this item. Okay, yeah, I'll just roll some dice. But if you allow yourself to get into the story and, feel the game, you can get really into it. Kind of like a D&D. So Dungeons and Dragons, that's something that Bryce and I, my husband, the other half of Better Half Reviews, have talked about like getting into, but it just seems so like, I don't even know where to start. This feels like a little bit easier of like, hey, here's a big story and a campaign that you kind of walk through and make decisions, but it feels really thematic and it gives you, just different quests and things to go through. So, for example, this discovery card, like when you draw it, it'll be like, okay, then it says narrative, the other. Resolve if you are alone and your hex has a forest or plains, otherwise redraw. And it gives you a little blurb and it says you enter a clearing and are shocked to see another person across from you. As they approach, your surprise turns to dread at the dawning realization that they look identical to you in every way. Ooh. And it gives you some different things of like a test, so you kind of like go through that, and depending on what happens, you're going to read different things or something else may happen to you. If you just want to play the game and just kind of, okay, yep, things happen, it's not going to be as enjoyable. But if you're getting into the story aspect, that's where it's going to shine. So as someone who is interested in games like these but usually holds off, I would say that this one's probably definitely worth a look and seeing if it's something that is up your alley. it does seem like a lot, but it kind of helps you through it, and it doesn't feel like so open world that I just don't know what to do. So sometimes, like in some other games where, like, even if like video games, even you're wandering around, and you're like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing. This has certain phases that you're going to be going through to kind of help you move along, to feel a little bit more structured, but still have that open world aspect. And I really like the idea of the story and seeing how it's coming along. I'm really interested to figure out what else there is, because I don't have the whole game and I don't want to spoil anything either. But it'll be interesting to see how things play out. And I love that the characters, you take them through their lives. They start out young, then they get old, and then they become legends. And I love that aspect because, like with olden times, it's like, oh, all the stories that are told, all these legends. And so, maybe your character can help pass down knowledge as a legendary. It's just really cool. On the back of this, it looks like, inside of a cave. And there's things that you're going to come across where you find these different symbols, and you can mark them down for later. You can mark them down here. So it's kind of like you're creating your own like cave painting of things you've discovered. And I just I like that idea. I don't know if I'd actually do it or not, but it's pretty cool. So it's just a little thing they didn't have to do, but it's just like, oh, that's a really cool idea. So I said a lot, and I said a little about everything. Overall, it's interesting and kind of, it's not one that I would play by myself. I definitely want to play with other people to help me get into the story and kind of explore and discuss and talk things out together. I feel like that would be, at least for me personally, the best way to play it, with a couple other people to dive into that story. I feel like it would help you look forward to it more and be like, okay, what's going to happen today? So you can play it solo, and you can play it, solo with a couple characters, but I think playing it with others would be best, because this feels more like an experience and something I'd want to share with others. So if you are interested in Stonesaga, I'll put a link in the description below where you can check out the Kickstarter. Definitely worth a look. It's beautiful, it's intriguing, and it has some innovative ways to present that campaign and story mode of a game. And yeah, check it out. Alright, so I'm Allison with Better Half Reviews. Happy gaming! Hopefully it didn't run out of time.